Did you get caught up as we start with let's start with the Olympics? Did you get caught up in the women's tournament?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've got a young youth hockey player, 10U girl in my house, and she's homesick today, which was perfect.
Right.
So we watched the whole thing, and I in a past life I worked at USA Hockey, and I've had a chance to see the work that the women put in, and the work that goes into creating a national team, and just really excited for everybody that was there. Former Rochester Americans assistant coach John Robleski is a friend from years back, and to see him, help lead that team, and then to see, women like Hillary Knight and Megan Keller, who have been, through the good, the bad, and the ugly, come through for them in such a big moment. It was a thrilling game to watch, and it's been fascinating to see that rivalry develop, and just it every single time they go for a gold medal, it's going to be a war.
How surprising was the game being, if at all, to you, that the game was as tight as it was? Because we've been talking here, like Mike went to see, he also has a daughter playing, I should let him tell you this, but went to see the Canadian women and the U.S. women play here in Buffalo, and they played other exhibitions, and and then the tournament happened, and the U.S. is just steamrolling everyone, including Canada, and to have it be scoreless as long as it was, and then be down 1-0 so late was a little jarring. Were you surprised by that?
It was jarring, and then you kind of stopped to think about it a little bit more. And one of the big storylines is that USA went with a much younger group, a lot of first-time Olympians, a lot of players that are still in college, and Canada went with an older group. There's actually about a 4-year difference in the average age between the two teams. And so when you think about it that way, you say, it'd be younger, quicker, fat, that's what they looked like in the first game when they beat them 5-0 in the Olympics. And they did win 8 consecutive games now, including today, over Canada. And so, but what you remember is that, these Canadian women have been in these games before. They have been through this war before. They know how to handle themselves, and they played an almost perfect game today. And in the end, it was a couple of moments that helped the U.S. get through. And as I mentioned, it was actually veteran players that made the biggest plays in the game. So there was nerves for sure in the early stages of that game. USA eventually settled in, and then with the goalie pulled, they end up tying the game and then get that overtime winner. An incredible play by Megan Keller to win it for Team USA, and put her own stamp on this after such a tremendous tournament for herself. So it was awesome to watch, and certainly it was a surprise to see that they just couldn't get their game established for as long as that happened. But I figured once it got to 3-on-3 that the U.S. speed would be a major factor.
We weren't sure it was going to be 3-on-3.
Yeah.
And it was. And I thought you would know better. You both would. You watch the NHL 3-on-3, and you kind of know exactly what you're going to get. And, maybe there'll be a breakdown, but everybody's backing up and coming back out of the zone and circling again, whatever they're going to do. It looked to me like the women maybe just had that much less experience with the format. And it wasn't as you wouldn't see as many turnovers in an NHL overtime than you got in like the first 2 minutes of the overtime game today, because it might have been just like that much more different to them. But having said that, what a play on the winning goal, because I kind of think when Keller gets that long pass, she's going to go in and nobody's with her, and she's going to turn around. Because that's what you see all the time.
Right, she's one-on-one. She's probably going to wait for help and hope to hit a pass, and maybe somebody didn't pick up a trailer or that. But instead
she went Brad May on Ray
went
Bork.
off the dribble. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great – that is – I didn't really think of it that way. And but I guess with you guys being in Buffalo, it was a Mayday moment there for Megan Keller. But, yeah, and that was like a high-risk play too, right? And she's not necessarily – she's an offensive – she's produced points throughout her career, plays in the PWHL, is the captain of the Boston Fleet. Like she's been in, big time moments before, but I did not see that coming where she's, doing the drag around the defender and then slipped it just inside. I mean, the margins in that game were so slim because you look at, Canada's goal, it was a very strange hop off the glass. There have been tons of weird bounces in this rink, which we expected would happen with how quickly it had to be put together. Mm-hmm. And then, there was a lot of these little moments, and it just reminds you of how hockey can be when you've got two teams that are so even, and that it sometimes can take, a bounce or a great play, as we saw at the end of the game, to make all the difference. So, I mean, what a great showcase for hockey, what a great showcase for the Olympics. And obviously, anytime the U.S. wins a gold medal, often a swell of interest in girls and girls hockey at the youth level comes with it. So a huge benefit for USA Hockey as well.
How much do you think the other countries are still lagging behind? I said it this way to Mike because, we've been following this tournament, obviously, just like you have. And I feel like the Finns and the Swedes and some of the Swiss are maybe at a point where maybe they're where Canada and the U.S. were 8 or 10 years ago now. And if they could play them in a time machine, maybe we'd get really, really tight, competitive games between more than just Canada and the U.S. But Canada and the U.S. just keep getting better too. And I don't know. Do you think the game needs? I think the game needs a third or a fourth team at the party a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly like to see that. I mean, the Swiss did push Canada in a way that I did not anticipate they would in the semifinal, and so I thought that was a good development overall. But the thing is that, as all of those countries get better, USA and Canada level up. They're the ones that are putting the most money into the development. They're the ones that are putting in the resources. And now with having the PWHL, which I think did level up the play in this tournament, with having a high level of hockey for these women to continue to play at, that helps a lot. There have been some other developments, though. So Sweden played for bronze. They ended up losing to Switzerland today. But Sweden has a national a league where they have for the women in there. They have the SDHL, which is basically all the men's clubs have that. So that's an infrastructure increase in Sweden. So I think that they're going to be coming along. I think Switzerland is going to continue to be a big player. And really, what will be interesting to see is will college hockey continue to grow, because we've seen many more international players come through U.S. college hockey, which has increased the level of play. So you're almost the U.S. is kind of having to develop the world a little bit in that regard in the NCAA, but I think it's a net benefit for the game.
Well done. Chris Peters, Flow Hockey with us, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog on WGR. Let's get to the men and possibly tracking toward another U.S.-Canada gold medal game, of course, but still one game for each team to win first tomorrow. What's the bigger upset for you tomorrow, Chris, if Canada or the U.S. were to lose?
I would say if the U.S. were to lose, just because Slovakia has far fewer NHL players than any of the teams remaining. And, I think the U.S., it's really interesting how this whole tournament played out, because, Canada is getting the lower seeded team, which is Finland, which I think is a tougher matchup. Mm-hmm. They are missing some key guys. No Alexander Barkov. That's tough. Obviously it was sad to see, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen not be able to be part of this and other things like that. But really, I do think that the Slovak team has, while they have played pretty well, it's a mismatch on paper. So that's always dangerous to think of it that way, mm-hmm. because if the U.S. goes into the game looking ahead to Canada, Slovakia is good enough to sneak up on you. And Juraj Slafkovský has been one of the best players in this tournament. And can he put a team on his back at 22 years old and, or 21 or whatever he is now? And just it'd be amazing if he could. But that's really what it's going to take. It's going to take him. It's going to take Samuel Halabai, who's had a pretty tough year in the AHL, but has always played well internationally. Those are the guys that are going to have to steal the game from the U.S., whereas I think Finland has the capability in terms of the style, the experience, the way that they play, the goaltending, all those different things to potentially give Canada trouble. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. But really, in the end, I think we probably will see the two North American teams prevail here and get the game that everybody's kind of had circled on their calendar since the Four Nations.
And by the way, by the betting lines, you're easily right that the U.S. is almost twice as big of a favorite tomorrow than Canada is.
Chris, you mentioned Halavai, and I read a little bit on him when the tournament started, and he was, I can't remember was their first game in the prelims against Canada?
They played Finland. So
Finland, okay, right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was great, and it was like, people were on Twitter quoting his save percentage in the AHL, and then someone came along, and now I'm hoping it wasn't you because I'm going to feel bad if I don't remember it was you, but somebody said, he's got a 923 save percentage in international play. So this is someone who's elevated when he's gotten on that stage as opposed to just, going through it in the minors.
Yeah, that was me. Thanks for following. But that was and that is really. We talk a lot about the World Championship. You'll hear it mentioned a lot, and obviously Tage Thompson being on this Olympic team has a lot to do with him going and performing at the World Championship the way that he did. For a lot of these other countries, the World Championship is critical to your inclusion on the Olympic team, and Halavai has been very good at that event for Slovakia over the years, and we're kind of in an interesting era for Slovak hockey because they had the guys like Hossa and Bondra and all these players in years past. But now that group is long gone, and now you have the Slafkovsky, Dvorsky. There's another group, Nemec. There's another group coming here, and they needed that goalie as well, and that seems to be Samuel Halavai. Now, he hasn't had a great year in the AHL, but he's also playing on the last-place team in the league. And also Jesper Wallstedt, who's had a great year in the NHL, was on that team last year and had similarly poor numbers. So, there's sometimes goalies are a product of their environment, but you can see that this is a player that is absolutely dialed in, and what a great experience for him. And now you've got a logjam in net in Minnesota. Is this guy increasing his value to you, and either as a trade chip or a potential replacement for one of your current goalies?
Chris, how do you, just big picture, think this is going for the NHL? Having the pros back on the stage, and it's a workable time zone, unlike when they were in Korea or in China. Do you think this is a net win for the league?
I do. I mean, I think there's obviously more concessions they need to try to get from the IOC, which they probably will never get because the IOC is archaic and doesn't like to do things for anybody except for the people that give them billions of dollars. And so, which, I mean, I guess fair, whatever. In terms of the quality. I mean, I think about this. Usually, I don't think it helps the league as much as it helps the players. I don't know if it's going to be a lot more people are fans of going to games. I do think like we saw with TJ Oshie in 2014, he's a different level of star because of what he did at the Olympics. Quinn Hughes is now he's a Norris Trophy winning defenseman that had been playing in Vancouver, and a lot of the country had no idea who he was until the Olympics, and now he's going viral all the time on TikTok, staring into the void because all the people are saying he's seeing ghosts and stuff. But either way, he is now, you're bringing more to the forefront. So you're giving these guys a platform to be bigger stars than they already are at the NHL level because the audience is so much larger. So a USA-Canada gold medal game is massive for the league. And I would also venture to say, and not trying to be biased about it, but I do think a U.S. win goes a lot further than another Canada win for growing the sport in the country and growing interest and then these players being followed. But I think you're going to see a lot more Quinn Hughes jerseys out there. I think you're going to see a lot more, people that are getting on board with following hockey. But in the end, I think that the exposure that the Olympics provide is unlike anything you can get, including a Four Nations. This is far bigger than that, and I do think that will be a massive benefit overall for the league.
Chris, do you happen to know, we mentioned how we didn't know the 3-on-3 for the women. Seeing them go to an intermission made me think it wasn't going to be 3-on-3 because usually you just barrel right into that. But, again, you could be playing for 20 minutes or longer, I guess. So, you want to give them a chance to take a break. And Google told me it was going to be 5-on-5, and I said that on the air, and then I felt like a jerk because I was wrong. But do you know that, who wants it that way? Is it the Olympics? Is it the International Ice Hockey Federation? Is it the players themselves because they don't want to be playing 4-period, 5-period marathon games like they do in the NHL playoffs? Why is the 3-on-3 there to decide a gold medal?
Yeah, I don't like it any more than anyone else does, but it is an IIHF thing. This actually is there was a time where the gold medal could be decided in a shootout as well, which that is no longer the case. They'll play continuous overtime, 20 minutes at 3-on-3 for the men as well. And that is a relatively new development within the last 2 or 3 years where they've done the 20-minute 3-on-3 overtimes. Back in the World Juniors in 2017, that was a 10-minute overtime or 20-minute overtime, then a shootout. Now they're doing the continuous overtime. So it's not a great way to decide the gold medal. It's about, you want to talk about bounces making all the difference. I mean, that's really right there. It's more of maybe as much of a coin flip as a shootout can be at times. But that is how it will be decided. And I think, there's a couple of reasons they do it that way. Like, you can't have a 5 overtime game when you've got closing ceremonies and you've got players that need to get back to their clubs and you've got all the concern about injuries as it is.
Right.
Many of these tournaments happen in the middle of the season. So they're conscious of that. So that's why it is the way that it is. Does anybody like it that way? No. Is it going to change? Also probably no. So I think it's a tough way to decide a gold medal, but given the constraints and the timing of everything, it's probably the way it will be for the foreseeable future.
Chris, we've got 2 minutes left if you do. What are your thoughts on this Sabres season?
It's honestly, it has been wild to watch. I come to Buffalo an awful lot for combines and everything else, and obviously I'll be back for the draft as well. And, I understand the fan base and how passionate it is. And it has been a roller coaster at times, but I do think that having any amount of positivity in a Buffalo Sabres season is far better than what we've seen over the last however many years. I think there's a corner being turned internally. I do think that that's helpful. Like, if there's a culture change in terms of, new management and how things are going to be done, I do think that that's a positive. There are players that you can kind of rally around. Tage Thompson is going to be a guy that I feel, has a chance to come back to a hero's welcome. You think about what the Olympics did for Ryan Miller all those years ago as well. And so, I think that overall it's a positive thing. There's still ways to go. Like, I think there's still quite a bit of work to be done in terms of the long-term structure of the lineup and different things and getting players going. But, I mean, to have seen the run that they went on here and to see, players continue to develop and find their way as NHL players and being given the latitude to do that is good. I think it does take a little more patience, before we see whatever this is going to develop into. But this is a team that absolutely has core pieces that can be built around, and that is a good place to be for any team.
Well done. Really good to talk to you again, Chris. Flowhockey.com. How can we enjoy that site best?
Yeah. Head over to flowhockey.tv. It's a really good place. We've got Rochester Americans games. The AHL's on there. So yeah, head over there. We got our YouTube channel and a whole bunch of other stuff. We're even doing live reaction shows after each day at the Olympics too. So it's been a blast to be a part of it. Everything's growing there, and we're just going to continue covering hockey every day and bringing a lot of good stuff to hockey fans.
Flowhockey.tv. Thanks for the fix on that. Good luck to you and your 10U daughter, as long as, she's not playing mine.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Great to be with you.
Thank you, Chris. At Chris M. Peters on